We're here to talk about the wonderful world of cybersecurity, protecting yourself, and what should we be doing? What do we need to focus on? And one of the things we start with is, we're the cybersecurity evangelists. I talk about cybersecurity on a regular basis because we need to keep talking about it, because we need to take some action. Terry Beebe, on the other hand, he does all the hard work in making sure that companies are secure. And so he's going to have some fantastic insights as far as the technical pieces that we need to have. Now, this is designed to be interactive, and this is designed for you all. So if you've got questions or you've got comments, please don't hesitate to just interrupt us and let's and bring it out, because the more I can hear from the group, the more we're going to tailor this to meet your needs and make sure that you're covering things there. So I've been running RiverRun for 31 years now. I'm telling everybody my dad started it because I'm too young to have a company this old. Oh, tough crowd. So one of the things that in my background, I was a sales marketing, and I've been an entrepreneur for many, many years. And we started RiverRun because we saw a need, and we wanted to make sure that we're delivering good services for clients to keep them up and running and securely. And so Terry, can you tell a little bit about you quickly?
Sure. So I started in the IT industry in 1989. No jokes, please. Yes, there were computers back then. And I'm basically a system engineer by DNA, stock and trade. Spent the first several years of my career doing hardcore network migrations week after week after week after week. And so I very much think like an engineer. Basically, I've survived in the industry long enough that at this point in time, I function as a virtual CIO and a virtual CISO for our clients. And so clients who are in a relationship with us get the benefit of CIO and CISO services. And I like to tell people I am in fact paid to be paranoid. But hopefully today will be beneficial to you as you look at how IT security impacts your business.
And so in the acronym world, what a CIO is Chief Information Officer, and what a CISO is a Chief Information Security Officer. And so those are the roles that Terry plays for RiverRun and for our clients. So we've got the standard agenda. We'll keep moving because we got a lot to do. Talking quickly about RiverRun, 31-year-old company. We focus in working with organizations in the Milwaukee area. We've got primarily most of our clients are in the 7 counties around Milwaukee. We do have clients in different parts of the United States as well as different parts of the world because a lot of them have remote offices, or they've referred us into somebody that's in one place like that. We've got managed services for over 300 different companies, and our motto, our mission is helping our people, our clients, and our communities achieve meaningful results. And we do that by paying attention to clients, spending time listening, doing seminars like this and having feedback coming back and forth. We've got to make sure we're doing that in order to make sure we're providing value to our clients. So the first thing is, what is cybersecurity? And so the definition that we've got here is, cybersecurity is the secure and responsible use of information and communication technology. It is being responsible for your information by keeping the information secure and backed up. A lot of information. So we've got to make sure that we're doing these things. We've got to make sure we're paying attention to our system and how do we keep it safe. So now we talk about this artificial intelligence thing. Terry?
Yeah, artificial intelligence is a little bit of a newer buzzword for us, but basically we're talking about the ability of machines to mimic human cognitive functions like data gathering, learning, pattern recognition, and problem solving, allowing the machine to take logical action and essentially reason and act as if they were a human being.
Thanks. So the current state of cybersecurity. We always want to give some type of something that people really are attuned to and focused on, and that is, if you look at cybersecurity the same way you look at securing your house, you've got to think about, where were we 30 years ago? I was actually able to drive into my driveway, throw my keys on the floor so I wouldn't lose them, walk into the unlocked house and be able to function no problem. And it was great. I didn't have a lot of barriers to get into my house. Then I had to start taking the keys out, and then I had to start locking the front door, then I had to get a deadbolt, then I had to get an alarm system, then I had to get a security system, then I had to get a big dog to keep everything safe. So as we've evolved over the last 30 years in protecting our homes, IT has compressed that, especially since we hit that COVID. That made us just speed up everything even more so. So you got to kind of think in terms of, We got to stay current on cybersecurity. We got to stay current on keeping ourselves secure, the same way we think about keeping our house locked up.
So there are some trends that we want to talk about with respect to the IT world. Back in 1989 when I started, we were just worried about getting things to talk to each other and making sure that equipment was compatible and that it would actually stay up and running. But those are not the concerns that we have today. Everything is ridiculously reliable. However, what we do find is that in 2023, the statistics are that 69% of organizations have experienced a successful ransomware attack in the past 12 months. Data breaches have exposed over 7 billion records in the first half of 2024, and many of those we've heard about in the headlines, haven't we? And 60% of US credit card holders have been victimized by fraud. 45% of them have experienced fraud multiple times. And so let's talk a little bit about ransomware and the model that works. Basically, ransomware is run as a business, and the people who do it follow tried and true business patterns. The targeting and rate of success model, we're looking at out of 2,500 potential target organizations, basically 60 of those are going to encounter activity associated with known ransomware groups. And out of that 60, 20 are going to be successfully compromised. And out of that 20, one is going to fall victim to a successful ransomware event. And 1 in 2,500 might seem like, okay, that's not horrible odds, but all it takes is one event.
The big thing about it is a lot of us have sales processes and we say, okay, we need to start filling the funnel. We need a certain number of prospects to get down to appointments, to get down to new clients. They follow that same model with that 2,500. They're running a business. Whether we like it or not, they're running a business. They get up in the morning, they go to work. That's their targets, that's their numbers that they work within.
Well,
Yes?
do you think that a lot of those are international? Is that still the case, or are there more US-based?
There is more international, yes. But no, there still is a sizable number inside the United States. I don't have the number right now, but the attacks are coming from all over, that's for sure.
Yeah. So at the point in history that we're in, what we're finding is that bad actors are taking more and more and more ground, threat actors. You're familiar with some of the things that they're interested in. They're interested in your bank account information. They're interested in your credit information. They're interested in information about your employees, your clients, and your vendors. They're interested in your personal medical information. It was documented when a company like Microsoft comes out and says that they know for a fact that China has basically conducted a ransomware attack or an infiltration specifically to get American PMI. When Microsoft's willing to say that, you know that it's an issue. They're interested in your proprietary information, the things that are your source of business, your patents and so forth. They're interested in your security, your files, your data access. Oftentimes what they're interested in is not just doing a big, huge data grab. One of the things they're interested in is just small cumulative amounts of data because they can put that together from all kinds of different sources to make a larger payload. And they're interested in disrupting your business. Sometimes they're interested in disrupting your business just to see where your weaknesses are because it's the prelude to something that's going to happen later. And that leads into the next item. Many people think, I'm not going to be a target for ransomware or for a cyber attack. You may not be a target, you may be somebody's resume. How do you think hackers apply for a job? Hackers apply for a job and threat actors apply for positions by demonstrating what they can do. And your company may simply be the compromise that demonstrates their skill set to convince somebody else to employ them. And today what we're seeing is a proliferation of hacktivism. Particularly we hear about it in the news with the election cycle going on. There's huge concern about elections being tampered with through cybersecurity fraud. Basically, hacktivism is any kind of cybersecurity threat that is meant to forward a particular ideology or cause or political party or so forth.
So one of the third trend is that cybersecurity is an ever-moving target. And one of the causes of that is because the number of bad actors is increasing. The barriers to entry to become a bad actor, they're very small. You have a computer, you can get onto the internet, you can start becoming a bad actor. The other one is misaligned values. So again, we all have values. We have values on right and wrong. We've got values on what's yours, what's mine. And in the bad actor world, what's yours is theirs. They think they should be able to take it. If you can't protect it, they have the right to it. And that's the mindset that they've got there. The other thing is new tools, creative attacks. There's new things out there. How do we attack differently? One thing is the creative attacks too. It's not just on the computer. It's not just over the internet. They're picking up the phones and now they're starting to have conversations with people trying to glean information or get them to take action. So this is very important that we're spending time talking about this and listening to these types of things, because we just have to create the awareness so that when the phone call comes and they're asking us to do something quickly, we're going to be suspicious. The other thing we've got is need for speed. We've got to go faster because our clients want us to go faster, because we've got to take this order in and be able to get this processed and get stuff out of the warehouse and get it on my doorstep within 20 minutes of me placing an order. That's what's going on in this world. We're connecting things together. So the more we're connected together, the faster we can be. But the more we're connected together, there's more holes that could be poked into our security for our own businesses and our own individual lives. The other thing is international business. As Chuck was asking about, there's a lot of international attacks going on. Well, it's international business. They have different rules with how to conduct business in different countries. Again, different values. What's theirs is mine, and who can monitor and what can happen. It's all different in different parts of the world. So you have to understand where you are with the international business. We've got hosted applications. Oh, don't worry, my stuff is fine. It's all hosted. It's in the cloud. I'm good. No. If it's hosted in the cloud, it just means it's under somebody's watch at that point, but you still need to make sure that you're paying attention to it. The hosted applications are wonderful because they handle the updates and things like that, but we still have to make sure that there's security in place, both with how we go back and forth and how they're keeping it at that seam as well. Extremely lucrative. This is a lucrative business, like we were saying. People get up and they go to work to become a bad actor. And they are making a lot of money, and they're using Bitcoin a lot of times to make the transactions happen. So it's harder for them to claw that back. And so that's one of the things. This is why it's a moving target. The last thing is new revolutionary technologies. So when we start talking about that, Terry, tell us about this AI stuff.
Sure. So AI, in and of itself, is more of a generic term, and in reality, we could say that AI started all the way back with kind of the inception of the first business and institutional electronic computers, and that, of course, happened in the 1950s, and basically, computer science was created in order to create machines that can replicate or exceed human intelligence, but really they were there to assist human intelligence at that point in time. But let's jump forward to 1997, and we are basically at a point where machines are able to learn from a data set. They're not just able to filter out data and show it to you. Now they're able to examine and learn from that data set and improve upon the data in order to make decisions or predictions. Now that works as a wonderful benefit for mankind and for business, but it can also work against us. Then let's jump forward. Now you notice there's almost a 40-year timeline before we get to that point. But now there's a much shorter timeline till we get to deep learning, and something called neural networks starts to become important. And that is the point at which basically layers of IT networks are joined together to simulate the activity in the synapses and the neurons of a human brain, and that is to process data and make decisions. And then we jump forward to just a few years ago when we all started hearing about ChatGPT and so forth. And it's at that point in time that we became familiar with generative AI. Now it's not only helping you make decisions and draw conclusions, now AI is actually creating content. Now AI is able to actually act and function like a person or a group.
So how many of you were surprised that AI has been around since the 1950s? Yeah, me too. And I'm in this. So it's amazing what's going on with AI. AI has been in security for many, many years. It's part of security, but it's also now part of the tools that the bad actors are utilizing right now. So Terry, you want to finish up with the recovery time?
Sure. So let's talk about what it takes to actually recover from a cyber incident. Recovering from identity theft can take up to 200 hours across the course of 6 months, and those statistics come from Allstate, a well-known insurance company. Your typical business email compromise resolution time, which is what many businesses, it's the most common type of compromise that businesses are going to face. And your typical time to get through that whole process is going to be 2 to 3 months. The average cost of a data breach in 2024 is $4.88 million. Now understand that that's the median cost, which means that there are 50% more organizations that it's costing more, and then 50% are underneath that window, but that's how big the industry is, $4.88 million.
And we're seeing a lot of ransoms, just the ransom itself being asked at $1 million. So we can see situations anywhere from $750,000 to about $1.5 million. That's the standard, that's what we see, unfortunately, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So we start looking at the security effects and the industries. And as you can see up here, there's an industry, or there's a lot of different industries, and I'm sure the industries that you personally utilize and your businesses utilize. The reason that we have this up there is because this cybersecurity isn't just going after healthcare, it isn't just going after financials. It's going through a lot of different industries. And this is just the top set. There's more. So the reason we put this up is just, again, to make sure that we realize this is not just focused on one industry, it's focused across the board.
Let's talk a little bit about regulations and requirements for just doing business. Many people think of IT as the way that they're able to get their product made, the way they're able to get their product sold, the way they're able to get it out the door. But the reality is that as we do those things, there's more and more government regulations. And in particular, as cyber attacks increase, what we're finding is a more heavily regulated industry. And so some of you may be familiar, of course, everybody's familiar with HIPAA requirements, right? Everybody's familiar with the HIPAA requirements. Some of you may or may not be familiar with CMMC and DFARS. Wisconsin's a manufacturing state, and that means we make a lot of things for the defense industry. And if you're making anything for the defense industry, you don't have to be making tanks or ships or guns. All you have to do is make the parts that go in those tanks, ships, and guns. And you're subject to CMMC and Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement rules. That's a long list of regulations that a manufacturer has to meet from a security standpoint just to ensure that our information doesn't fall into the wrong hands. If you're working in the financial industry, you're regulated by FINRA, by the SEC, by the Federal Trade Commission, and there are also other corporate compliancy bodies, privacy laws for CCPA and BIPA. In addition to mandatory requirements that you may have to meet cybersecurity regulations, you may find that you are having these requirements put upon you by your clients and your vendors. How do you get the whole country to follow a certain set of regulations without an act of Congress? Now, I mean that only half jokingly. Here's how you do it. You force one agency or one industry to comply with something that is regulated by law, and then you force them to make sure that everybody they're doing business with complies with the same rules. Then you have trickle-down regulations, and you can literally cross the country with that. In fact, you can cross the globe. We'll be talking a little bit more about that later. And cyber insurance companies are also requiring cybersecurity compliance. Once ransomware attacks started going through the roof, many cyber insurance companies just simply folded up. The traditional insurance carriers, many of them said, that's it, we're not doing this anymore. But a whole new industry arrived, and they decided the way we're going to be profitable is we're going to take a cue from the compliancy bodies, and we're going to start asking the same things of the people who are subscribing to our insurance that the compliancy bodies are asking. And so what that means is that basically every business is going to find itself conforming to some form of regulation and requirement.
Any questions so far? Okay, take a breath. We're throwing a lot of stuff at you, I know. And it gets to be pretty heady stuff. So we're gonna do a quick quiz. No, you didn't have to study for it, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to just get an idea as far as looking at email threats. What are some of the things to look for? So can anybody just tell me, what do they see out here that says this is a good or a bad email? Is this something I have to worry about?
Website or the location where the email came from.
Yep. Okay. What else?
Name's not capitalized.
Right?
You need to act immediately.
Yep. Yep. They're
Very
calling-
good. Excellent.
Get moving fast.
I'm assuming maintain credentials is a link.
Yep. Okay. Right. So that's another thing. We've got this link. So here's all the things that we see wrong with that. You got to watch for spelling. River run, capital R in the river, capital run there. The other thing is high importance. Ooh, that sounds impressive. But the high is capitalized, the I is not. So you just have to watch for those little nuances there. Some of the things, credentials is due for update. Proper grammar, things along that line. That's a critical thing you have to look for. You've got to just make sure that when you're looking at emails, slow down. We all want to move fast, but we've got to slow down. You know, as Joel said, maintain credentials. If there's a little box that you get to click that saves you time, don't click on the box. Move, delete and move to somewhere else. If you're concerned about it, contact your IT team or contact your bank or contact whoever supposedly has sent this to you. It's important. Again, potential login issues. Woo, scary stuff. No period at the end. We've got to make sure that we're paying attention to these things when we go. Another one. What do you see in this one? Google's misspelled. What else?
More links
More links. Right on. Couple of them.
on the record.
Yep. So again, it's Google, a lot of extra O's there. We've got Google with a zero. You got all these things. And again, please sign in to verify that was you. So again, we've got to make sure that we're looking at what are we reading? We got to take our time, be very critical. This is when you have an AI run tool. This is what comes up on the screen. So that email, same email that pops up, you look, it's got this red banner. It says, Paul, pay attention. So it helps me by making sure that it's saying, okay, pay attention to what's coming. The other thing that it has there is it also will take links and say, nope, this link's not going to work for you. Even if you inadvertently click on it, it'll say, yeah, this is not really a secure site. You sure you want to go there? So it gives me a double sense of asking, again, do we want to have that? So that is, again, a great tool to have as far as in your arsenal to keep yourself safe. So as we talked about, some of the things to pay attention to. Misspelled words, poor grammar, action for urgency, gotta go now. Links to sites, incorrect logos, and subject line discrepancies. Hey, do you want a ton of money? Oh, don't forget to give us all your information. We gotta make sure that we got that covered. So some of the cybersecurity essentials, first off, we want to know thyself. And what does that mean? Terry?
The first thing you want to do is make sure you know your data. Know what it is within your organization. Take the time to prioritize and know what it is that you need to protect. The second thing is you need to know where your data is located, and you need to know how it moves. What is the flow of data as it moves through your organization, and what does it pass through, and where does it stop?
And that doesn't mean just inside of your walls. That means up in the cloud providers and things like that we have to be paying attention to.
The third thing that you should know is who needs and has access to your data. Who is it that has access right now, and who is it that really needs access? You need to go through that prioritization and have an awareness. And then you also need to know what your devices are and where your devices are and what they do. We've seen business compromises through things as mundane as VoIP phones. Your printer can be the source of a business compromise. Anything with an IP address has an operating system, and anything with an operating system can be an attack platform. The next thing you should do is know your client, vendor, and insurance requirements. Know what's required of you by the law, know what's required of you by your contracts, know what's required of you by your insurer. And then also, along with that, make sure you know the government regulations you need to follow. Know your recovery time objectives. In other words, one of the places where organizations still fall down sometimes is how long can I sustain an outage? When do I need to have things back up and running by in order to make sure that my organization remains viable? You know, for certain organizations that can be a period of 2 days to 7 days. For other organizations that can be a period of 2 to 3 minutes. And so it's important to go through that prioritization. The last one is be suspicious. I joked about it at the beginning when I said I'm paid to be paranoid, but the reality is we need to be suspicious. One of the things about the emails that Paul was showing a little bit ago, don't assume that just because there's poor grammar or poor spelling in those things that it means that your attacker is uneducated or poorly coordinated. All of those things are by design, and they are meant to try to get through your defenses, and they're counting on the scalability of numbers for one of them to get through. And so it's important that we all have an attitude of suspicion with everything that we're viewing. It'll cause us to pause and think about it. Let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity frameworks. A framework is a set of guidelines that are designed to help organizations assess and improve their ability to prevent, detect, and respond to cybersecurity risks.
So the reason we're talking about a framework right now is that a lot of clients that we meet and talk with, they start saying, okay, you got the SOC stuff, you got the CMMC stuff, you got all these things. What do I do? And a lot of it is, first off, we have to start with that framework. And so that's why we're starting this process. What is the framework that we need to fall under? And Terry's got some information on what we need to think about. But once we establish that, then it's now how do we put our cybersecurity structure back together?
Now we're going to look at some common cybersecurity frameworks, and I'll start by saying it's very important that every organization today, no matter how large or small you are, consider moving towards a cybersecurity framework. And there's a degree to which it doesn't matter as much which one you pursue as it does that you just simply make a decision to start moving down that path, and I'll explain why. The why is because the first framework we're going to talk about is ITIL, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library. Now that is a decades-old standard that actually comes from Britain. But it is still viable and valid today. It's still maintained today, and in fact, it's considered the gold standard. If you're looking at different cybersecurity frameworks, or your cyber insurance carriers, or your questionnaires coming from your clients, and you say they all have the same questions, why do they all have the same questions? It's because they've all got the same DNA, and chances are that DNA starts right there. Now, if you're in Wisconsin and you're manufacturing for the defense industry or the government, you may be familiar with the NIST standards, National Institute of Standards and Technology. There's 2 or 3 different NIST standards that apply to different manufacturing sectors here. And once again, NIST is a tough, rigorous set of standards, and they take their cue, or they originated from ITIL. And did I see a hand out there? Okay.
We can only hope.
So some of you are, maybe you've heard of SOC 2. And it's unfortunate that in our industry right now, there are actually 2 SOC acronyms. And one of them is a Security Operations Center, which we'd also love to talk to you about in a moment. But this one is really a security framework called System and Organizations Controls. And more often, you're going to be asked by your cyber insurance carrier or by your prospective investors or partners if you have a SOC 2 certificate. So that's what they're talking about. CMMC, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, is something that's familiar to anybody in Wisconsin and across the nation that's manufacturing for the defense industry. If you are an ISO certified company, ISO carries its own set of IT regulations, and those regulations very much look like NIST and SOC 2 because once again they take their cue from ITIL. Finally, we talked a little bit ago about how you get everybody in our country to behave a certain way without an act of Congress, and it might make you smile, but how do you get everybody to behave a certain way without even involving our government? We're looking at the General Data Protection Regulation. How many of you have heard of that? That is a European standard that is pervasive, and it is hyper-focused on the rights and the privacy of individuals. Every organization that's part of the European Union has to follow the GDPR. And oh, by the way, if you are selling products or services to one of those businesses or in partnership with them in any way, as an American company, you are now being regulated by something that was set in the European Union.
So as you can see, there is just a lot of frameworks, and then there's more than what we have here. These are the most common frameworks. And we start looking at all the different acronyms. What does this mean? How do I, as a business owner, know which one to pick? And all these things. That's what we're here for, is to help kind of work through those pieces. Each one of these frameworks has specific criteria that they want you to follow in order to become certified in that type of framework.
Now let's talk about how do I prioritize. When you first start pursuing a framework, and anybody who's pursued ISO certification understands this, it's mammoth. There's a lot of different controls. That's what we call them, the different individual requirements. There's a lot of different controls. And so how do I know where to start? Well, there's some things that you can do to help you know where to prioritize to begin with. First of all, government regulations. Whatever the government requires you to do are the things you should first spend your investments in. The second thing, of course, many of these are common sense. The next layer goes to what are your client and vendor requirements? What do I need to do to keep my contracts? What do I need to do to get a contract? I'll invest in those items next. What are the requirements of my investors? If you're funded by a private investment firm or a board, what are their requirements? And then the next thing is, what is my return on investment going to be? What's it going to be? What's it going to cost to implement and maintain, and then make this useful for me? And then finally, a strategic timeline. Manage it just like you manage your home repairs. You can probably find 100 things around your house that need to be fixed, and you can't afford to do them all this year, right? But you understand that you don't have to get them all done this year. You can pace it out so that they all get done in a certain amount of time, and you can do the same thing with respect to cybersecurity requirements in your business. Let's talk about some things you absolutely must have in the cybersecurity world, and these are items that I'm passionate about, so I'll take this one if you don't mind. The first thing you want is make sure that all of your devices, your endpoints and your servers are protected, not just with traditional antivirus, but make sure they're protected with next generation endpoint detection and response. And make sure that that has the backing of a SOC behind it as well.
This is the one I'm passionate about. Multi-factor authentication. You've got to make sure that you've got it. And I know it's a pain because you have to take one more step, or you got to wait for one more code, or you got to wait for one more thing that you have to click. But you know what takes longer? Recovering from a security event. So let's just activate multi-factor authentication on anything that you're connecting to. I bet your password are passionate about this.
Strong password policies. Make sure your passwords are not just 8 characters. Your password should be 12 characters or longer. I'm going to also say you want to make sure that wherever possible, you're using non-rememberable passwords. And use non-rememberable passwords that are created by a password generator. Why use a password generator? Because it's a psychology disruptor. It's not coming out of your head. Therefore, it's not easy for someone else to build a custom-built password cracker tailored to you or your organization. How can I possibly use non-rememberable passwords? Use a password manager. Use a password manager that is FIPS certified so that it's encrypted and zero trust, and use that to keep track of all but the one password you need to know, which is the one you log into your computer with.
And the password manager, just think of it as a big secure database where it just keeps tabs on all of your passwords and all the different sites that you're going to log into. If you've got questions on that, you can talk to us after and we can give you more info on that.
Make sure when you're backing up that you're not just backing up, but make sure that your backup is also leaving your premises. You should be using what we would call an encrypted, air-gapped, immutable backup. What does that mean? It means that your backups should be protected by some form of encryption. An air gap means that they are stored somewhere else besides your organization and they're using a completely different authentication mechanism. You see, if I manage to compromise your Windows domain and your backups are part of your Windows domain, I get your backups too. But if you're using an air gap backup, there's something else that I can't reach on the other side. And then an immutable backup means one that cannot be overwritten. There's a little bit more cost involved with that, but it's one way to absolutely guarantee that if you're ever in a cyber attack, you can recover your data, which puts you in a strong position when you're talking about negotiations with a threat actor. The next thing you want to have, which sounds rather non-intuitive and boring, but you want an incident response plan. Trust me, you want an incident response plan. Your cyber insurer will require that you have an incident response plan. What is an incident response plan? It's basically a follow the numbers strategy for how you deal with a cyber incident. Why do I need something like that? Because when a cyber incident occurs, no matter how sane you are, no matter how rational you are, there's going to be a high degree of panic and uncertainty in your mind, and there's going to be a whole bunch of people around you who are far less rational than you are. And that plan basically is intended to function as your supervisor while you're going through it to make sure you don't miss any steps. And afterwards, it functions as a legal protection for you because you can demonstrate that we did the things necessary and responsible as a corporation to do. You also want to make sure that you have IT governance regulations. This is where we come back to the whole idea of a security framework. If you're pursuing a security framework, then it becomes very easy for you to determine what your IT governance policies should look like. You want to have automated training and testing. It's not enough just to simply say we've got an incident response plan, or not enough to say that we've educated our people on ransomware attacks. There has to be some method of actually testing, because if an attacker cannot break through your network administrator's firewall, they're going to go for your people. And they're far more effective at getting your people to let down the wall than they are getting your network administrator to let down the wall. You want to make sure that you're engaging in a regular regime of vulnerability scanning. And you want to make sure that you are starting to use device management in your organization. What does device management mean? It means that your computer is not allowed on my network unless you have an EDR, unless your firmware is up to a certain date, a certain version, unless your operating system patches are up to a certain version. And oh, by the way, if you're carrying that program over there, there's no way we're going to allow you on the network. So all of those things happen with device management. And then a security operations center. You know, we're a fairly large firm for a managed service provider. We've been around a long time. We've got 55 plus system techs and engineers at any point in time, and yet we will not trust ourselves to do our own security operations monitoring. And the reason for that is because your attacker has one job, and he has to do it over and over and over. And he knows that you have 1,000 jobs to do, and he's counting on that. And so really the volume of attacks that occur on a daily basis in any given organization are in the thousands or tens of thousands or even millions. How do you possibly keep up with that with paid personnel? You do it through a security operations center that already has all the automation in place, and they're trained to work with your team. You only get the alerts when there's serious alerts, and your team knows what to do to act on them.
So when we look at the security operations centers, this is an important part. In the IT world, growing up in this, I used to hear this phrase, oh, I got a guy. And that was about everything. Oh, I got a guy. Oh, I got a guy. Now it's security. Oh, I got a guy. I'm going to say it right now. You don't got a guy. Nope, you don't. We need a team. And so when we look at the security operations centers, you also want to ask, tell me about your security operations center. What level is it? Because level 1, basic. I got a guy. He's doing it in his basement. He's got it all taken care of. Neat. Nope, he doesn't have it taken care of. If you look, each level starts growing with different services, different pieces. We only work at the high level, 5, innovative. And that's where you've got a lot of things going on. You've got people that are watching these screens 24/7, 365 days a year. You've got these tools that go onto systems, and those tools are just monitoring and being constantly updated because there's another team that's updating the tools and keeping the tools consistent. Then you've got a team that's seeing what kind of reporting is coming out of these things and what do we need to modify with our reporting? Do we react to these things? How do we react to these things? You know what? We aren't infallible, so let's start testing. So now we got a team that's trying to break into our own system to see where there might be holes there. And so all these different levels make up a level 5 innovative security operations center. So again, if somebody says, I got a guy, say, no, you don't. If they say, I got a couple of guys, no, you don't. You got to have a team, and you got to get up to this level 5. That's something that you want to make sure that you have. You're talking about XDR.
Yeah. So XDR stands for Extended Detection and Response, and it's really what we should be, the bread and butter that we should be aiming for as far as how our monitoring occurs. The events that are going on in your environment are then monitored by a SIM, and a SIM monitors all your network devices, monitored by SOAR technology, which is basically security orchestration, analysis, and response. All of those logs are being aggregated together and then filtered through in order to determine what is a real threat and what isn't. Your SOC then takes all of that data to do the analysis, and all of that happens in a single pane of glass. Okay? That's your visibility. Your detection is your SIM analysis across all the various data sources. Think about all the different items in your network. They all write logs of some type, but they don't write the same kinds of logs, do they? And so what automation does is it takes all of those different log types and is able to put them together to know what's going on at a single point in time, and then determine what should actually trigger an alarm at that point. And once an alarm is triggered, how do we analyze that? And the rest of that information is then collapsed. That's the event reduction, because we can't sit there and read it all. We can't sit there and ingest it all. So we need to know where the tripwires are. And then finally, the response. Once the alerts go off, then remediation starts to occur at that point. And of course, we're happy to say the one number you can call is River Run.
So let's talk quickly about the incident response plan. Terry touched on some of the pieces there. We look at, it's the documented process for action and reaction. Thinking again about the house analogy. If you got home at 12:15 in the morning and your front porch light was off and you know you left it on and the front door was open a little bit and you knew you locked it and the alarm's turned off, and you kind of go into the house wondering, did the kids leave the alarm? Did they leave the front door open? What's happening? There's confusion. You hear noise in the kitchen. You go to the kitchen, you flip on the light. You can't flip the light on because the light's not turning on. Then you remember you've got the keys for your neighbor's house sitting on your dining room table because they're out of town, and now is their house compromised? You don't know what's going on. There's confusion. Multiply that times about 127, and that's what it's going to feel like when you're in the middle of a security incident with your business. So again, it's a guide that's going to document the incident mitigation and remediation tasks. What do I need to do? When do I need to do it? Who do I call? Who are the people that we need to call? How am I going to communicate with them? Because that's another piece to it. If my email's compromised, do I want to use my email to tell everybody we've got a security incident and here's what you're supposed to do? No, you've got to have a backup plan with how are we going to communicate with our team members that we have this incident. We've got to also make sure that what's the steps for remediation? Do I start unplugging everything? Do I just start turning stuff off? What do I do at this situation? You've got to make sure that you've got a plan for that. It's got to be part of it. It's got to be consistent, and it's got to be practiced. You got to practice this, because if you don't practice it, it's not going to be effective when it does occur, and it's going to occur. That's the last part, is test the incident response plan. You got to keep testing it. It doesn't keep working. And that's important for us there. So some of the important cybersecurity enhancements are disaster recovery plan, business continuity. Expand your incident response plan to take care of a disaster recovery, include a disaster recovery plan. The other thing is instructor-led training and testing. Having sessions like this is wonderful. We see that we do this for all of our clients, and we say, okay, let's get a group of 20 people to start talking about technology and about how to keep ourselves safe. And the questions that come out are just, it's fantastic, because people start talking about things they should be thinking about. And that's our job, is to make sure we're getting those questions out and talking about them. We've got penetration testing. And that's a more updated type of testing. It comes from the outside, and they are working to say, where's a hole? I found a hole, cool. Now, how far can I get through that hole? They're taking big opportunities or big chances to break through this system. They're working really hard, coming up with different things there. You've got cloud services, third-party vendor security review. In other words, anybody who is hosting services for you or you're working with that you're connected to in somehow, you've got to ask them, tell me how secure you are. How are you keeping yourself secure? Because if they're connected to you, they could be a pipe to come into your organization. Full logging, that again is what's going on in the system. When somebody does some activity, we got to capture that information. Bad actors, when they get into the systems, they come in and they start just cleaning up behind themselves. They do that not because they're courteous guests in your network. They do that because it makes it hard for you to figure out how they got in there, so that you might leave the window open for them to break in again. That's one of the reasons why you want to have logging there. Third-party multi-factor authentication. Again, not just Microsoft multi-factor. You want to use a third party outside of that, because that gives you now another layer of security that you don't have if you're using one vendor for those types of things. Last thing is application blacklisting, whitelisting. Let's make sure we have a naughty list for applications that nope, we don't want people to utilize. And let's make sure we have a white list for the ones that we do want people to be able to utilize on our system. And then lastly is Microsoft GCC High. So Terry, can you give us a quick thing on information on that?
Sure. So if you are manufacturing in Wisconsin and you are manufacturing something for the defense industry and you know that you're going to have to comply with CMMC, then you need to know about Microsoft GCC High. So GCC High is basically another Microsoft Office world, let's put it that way. The way that Microsoft Office accomplishes all the magic that we love every day is by following the clock and by using a global presence to provide support, but also all the little nice tools and things that make our days flow. But if you are needing to comply with Department of Defense regulations for security, then your data needs to be stored someplace that is completely within the sovereign US, and you need some sort of assurance that the people who are working on your data are US citizens who can be held accountable by the sovereign US at any point in time. That's what GCC High is, and by the way, that's not a River-Run product. That's nothing that we made up. That's Microsoft's own enclave that is completely US sovereign. Now, one thing to brace yourself on, your price is going to go up by 3 or 4 times what you're currently paying for Office licensing when you look at GCC High. Now, if you're manufacturing and you're able to control your scope, there are some other options. Call us, we can talk to you about that. But if your whole network is in scope, and those of you who are manufacturing for the Defense Department know what I'm talking about. If your whole network is in scope, you need to be planning for GCC High.
So we want to give you some ideas as far as some of the actions you can take today. And so some of those, the top 10 we have are, do not click on emails or text, in text. You don't want to click on things. No links. We want to also use our personal hotspot. No public Wi-Fi. Yes, there's going to be free Wi-Fi in this building. Please feel free to utilize it at any moment. No, do not use the Wi-Fi. Don't use public Wi-Fi because it's a shared solution. Other people can watch what's going on in your system. Yes, you may have all this cool security, but that's one of the areas. Don't use the one at your coffee shop, nowhere. The other thing you want to do is use multi-factor authentication. Have you guys heard that before? I think somebody said that.
Everywhere.
So delete email, text, apps, and files no longer in use. Again, we download things all over the place because it's the coolest application. You got to try this thing. It's fantastic. And then we forget it's there, and then it becomes a security hole for us. Delete the old stuff, get the stuff out of the closet. Same thing, house analogy, clean out the closets on a regular basis. Do not use your deleted folder as your archive. That means clear that deleted folder out every once in a while. You don't need it. I know it's hard. We should start therapy groups for people to delete out of their group, but it's true. We got to keep those things clean. Stay current with system updates. That's a big one. You got to keep your system updated. When we start looking at others, it's do not use the same password for more than one account. That's Terry's passion, passwords. We got to keep tabs on those things. Oops. Use an encrypted password manager and generator, as he talked about before. Don't reply to unknown senders. Share as little as possible on all sites. In other words, when you're out there talking about the meal that you had at a fantastic restaurant and then talking about the boating that you did that weekend, bad actors are starting to combine and put a profile together on you. Don't let them do that. Keep your data close to the vest. Activate email and device monitoring. That again is security operations centers can watch that for you so that it protects your emails. So again, when we start looking at some of the premiums, this is kind of scary. Did you need something?
I was just curious. I didn't see VPN in your list of top 10.
Yes, VPN, thank you very much for asking about that. We ran out of 10, so 11 would be VPNs. We want to make sure that you have the VPN with, what's that?
Number 2 should have been VPN.
We can talk about different ideas with regards to that, but definitely not now though, because we're running out of time.
Okay.
So 25% to 100% over the past year, we've seen rates go up. We got to make sure that we're not letting that happen. Some of the things you want to do when you're reviewing your cyber insurance, you've got to know what's covered. Again, I have conversations with people, they say, oh my gosh, don't worry about me, I've got a $3 million policy. What does that $3 million policy cover? Because some of them puts limitations on how much they're going to pay for the ransom. So you've got to make sure that you're secure on that. You've got all these different areas: system repairs, legal services, security firm, lost revenue, fines, public relations, communications, lost employees, the whole 9 yards. We got to make sure that we are aware of what our policies are covering. The cybersecurity checklist, Terry, you want to hit some of these?
Sure. So if you want just a to-do list to keep handy, Security Operations Center, absolutely. If you're running a business, you should be engaging one. Hosted backup that's encrypted and air-gapped. Make sure you're maintaining your software and hardware patches. Make sure, just do it. Complex passwords, make sure that you're using complex passwords, and make sure that you're performing vulnerability testing. And then for organizations that require it or need a little bit more security, make sure that you're not just doing vulnerability testing, but also penetration testing. Vulnerability testing looks for where the holes are. Penetration testing looks at how far through the hole it can get. That's how you can compare the two. Don't use public Wi-Fi. Make sure you're using multi-factor authentication and preferably third-party multi-factor authentication. Train your team regularly. Engage in phishing awareness, and never leave your devices unattended or unlocked. MFA, train your team. Separate devices for work and personal use. That's another thing, just do it. Only use necessary applications and data. Encrypt your hard disks. BitLocker is there, use it. Establish IT governance policies and practice. When in doubt, call, ask, and delete, and have a tested incident response plan.
So some of the next steps, can you answer yes to these? My organization is properly protected on all endpoints, including mobile and home devices. Number 2, all employees are properly trained and tested to avoid being fooled by bad actors. Testing once a year does not count. You don't get to say yes to that. You have a security incident in place with a team of experts ready to assist you. Now, you see that we did a spelling error there. It should have incident response plan. Guess we got to get AI activated. So as we look at this, these are three of the big questions that you want to make sure that you ask. Ask yourselves about these things. So the main thing we wanted to make sure people take to heart here is take action. You've got to do something, take a step forward. Ask your IT team, what do we have here? Get this slide deck from us, and we're happy to share it with you. The more we can share this and spread the word with people, the more the bad actors are going to be out of jobs. And that's the thing that we're working for. We want to make sure they're out of jobs. We want to make sure that we're taking action to keep ourselves safe. So again, if you've got any questions, please let us know. You can click on this and get connected with us as well. Thank you very much for the VPN comment. That's, again, a very important part of cybersecurity that you want to make sure that you're incorporating in your practice. There's also all those other things that we gave you a list on too. So take action, please. And any questions? Whew. Oh, I can go back to that one for you.
I can send anybody the slide deck. Come on over, I'll get your information.
Any other quick questions?
For those of you who might have a question about MFA, I'd be happy to speak with you afterwards. Feel free to snag me. There's actually questions today, even among cyber insurance carriers with respect to MFA, which is one of the reasons why it didn't hit the top of our list here.
The VPN.
VPN.
Thank you. Yes?
So with AI becoming more prevalent, what is your team's philosophy on, I know a lot of companies are using Copilot, which is Microsoft's private server version of ChatGPT, but it also can't learn if it's not shared. But obviously you don't want your information going out everywhere, so how are you guys helping your customers believe that out there?
That's a great question. And so how do we do it is to say, again, share the least amount that you have to. Because when you put it out there, it now becomes part of the general domain, and then other people can utilize it. And again, you've lost control of those types of things, especially if you're running things with a lot of high priority or high proprietary tools and proprietary functions. You want to make sure that you're keeping that out of there. Terry, do you have any more on that?
Yeah, the first rule of thumb would be the obvious one, which is before you turn Copilot loose, think long and hard about your permission structure within your organization, and make sure that that's tested and retested, and that committee has met and talked about what those permissions, because if Copilot finds it, and if Copilot has permission to get to it, it's going to get out into the open.
So great question. Any others? All right. Thank you all for your time. I think we ran it right on, so I appreciate it. Thank you.